Hey everybody, thanks for joining us today. We're excited to go over this webinar and creative. There's a lot about AI and uh, really AI everything, but it's not all about AI. So we're going to dive in deep today on best practices for creative, including how you can use some AI, but it won't all be about AI. So we'll give, so people are filing in, we'll give it maybe one more minute before we get started, and I'll introduce myself quickly, and then I'll let Kathleen introduce herself. Jason Landro, I'm one of the founders of Nectar. We're a digital marketing agency with a focus on marketplaces. We have a full creative studio in New Jersey. That's photo, video, graphic design, creative strategy, AI creative. We also do marketplace management and media management. So we are experts on the subject. It's not a sales pitch. We're actually going to go through the frameworks that we use, and I will let Kathleen introduce herself.
Thanks, Jason. So my name's Kathleen Shiban. I'm the Director of Creative Strategy here at Nectar. I've been with Nectar about 2 years, and I've been doing content strategy and analysis messaging strategy for over a decade across both agency world as well as working directly for brands in various spaces, a lot of sports and outdoor CPG brands over the years. And now I work with all of the hundreds of brands that we work with on a daily basis, looking at the opportunities to maximize the impact that creative can have for your growth and sales potentials, specifically within Amazon, Walmart, e-commerce spaces. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to talking through some of these opportunities. There, we see a lot of patterns in all the many brands we audit, so it'll be fun to share some of those insights.
Yeah, and without further ado, we're going to jump in here. So as I mentioned, we are experts. We have done creative for a lot of different brands in all different categories. And keep going here. Um, so I think a lot of the kind of fundamental flaw is that people often or brands treat creative as a project, like one and done, and it's not. Um, it needs to be more comprehensive. The larger your catalog, the more nuanced your approach has to be. So we're going to go through the mistakes that we find, as well as the frameworks we use that are kind of evergreen. And so we'll dive into that today. So starting with the mistakes, Kathleen's going to run us through them since she's the resident expert. So without further ado, mistake one.
All right. So this comes up really frequently. We often see that there's some good creative out there. The brand is recognizable, but one of the things that often really pops out is that you're speaking to everyone and really not converting the right people. So one of the key aspects of making sure that your creative is going to convert the customers is having alignment with the kind of traffic that you're bringing in through advertising, and also knowing your accurate demographic within the Amazon space. Sometimes it is more general than maybe your off Amazon retail customer for a certain platform off Amazon. But at the same time, if you're in e-commerce and you're selling on Walmart or Amazon, there is data that you can look at to see who's actually purchasing and to really tailor and reflect that demographic in the content. This is an example to give you a little bit of a visual of this. The relatability is really key here. So when looking at your creative, you want to see it, am I reflecting back at the shopper the kind of people that tend to come and purchase these products? So in this case, we're all familiar with Welch's snacks, and tends to be families, kids of various ages that love these products. The original content, the fun nature of the snack and the colors are very evident, but what's really lacking is the resonance with the people that are actually purchasing the product. So you see more lifestyle imagery, you see a little bit more playful language around why you purchase this product in what's created here on the right hand side. So this is something to really look out for. And what we really would recommend too is just look at what your Amazon demographic really is. See if that's any mismatch from what you expect, but then definitely pick a direction and reflect that in how you speak to the customer through the graphics, the lifestyle imagery, and the copy as well. Another thing we see a lot, and this is really diving into the CPG space for a example, but we see this across all different industries, is that you really often miss out on differentiators. So it's one thing to talk about your features and benefits. Most people do that. Sometimes the benefits are not quite as obvious as they could be, but typically you do see features and benefits, and you'll see, applications, maybe some use cases every now and then, but it can all get lost and get buried within the infographic or carousel stacks. It can get buried within the A plus or maybe a lot of copy. This is a really good example from a space that is very saturated for supplements, where we have a product that everybody knows. The brand to some extent, they have ownership of this space specifically with magnesium. This is also a very common supplement of magnesium that a lot of people know the benefits for. So one of the things that we really addressed with this, that I think is a good example of this, is it's not like their creative didn't look good. They talked about a lot of great things, all of the benefits of the product, the ingredients of the product, a little bit about the brand, but what was really lacking was a clear statement of what actually differentiates them from other magnesium out there. Most people, when they come to a magnesium listing, they already know what magnesium does. It supports healthy bone density and good sleep. So that's not really what you need to get into. And those first few images where you really need to maximize your conversion rate, you really need to talk about what differentiates your product. And so you can see a couple of examples here on the right of what I'm talking about is getting really specific about this. So when you're auditing your listings, you want to look at, am I talking about the right things to really stand out against my competition, distinguish my product from other products that I sell even, and really making sure that that's being addressed in the first couple of images, in your title, really upfront on your listings.
Yeah, and I think it's a really great point because sometimes we forget to be customer centric in how we design content or even devise an advertising strategy. And the way that people shop is in search, still heavily dominated in search, even though there's a lot of noise about AI, especially on Amazon. They put in a keyword to find a product and they get a bunch of results for this similar products or even the same product generally. So then when they land on the page, you're giving them generic benefits or use cases doesn't do anything to differentiate your product. So it's really important to be customer centric in how you design or develop your content.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's a really great point. I mean, we're all using AI to scale and to speed up production, especially for like the lower tier products in your catalog. That makes a lot of sense. But if you think about your top seller and how much competition and saturation there often is at the top of your catalog in certain spaces, that's where you really need to stand out against the gray noise of all of that content. It needs to really, really be distinct. So, even starting out with some AI production and refining it to make sure that you're talking about the right things. That's really a mistake you don't want to make is to be too generalized because you'll never stand out if that's the case on your top sellers. All right. Alexa shopping is really becoming more important for discovery and traffic to your listings. I know we talk a lot about the fact that content is mostly influencing levers like conversion rate, return rates, looking at things like brand awareness, branded search, metrics like that. However, traffic still can be influenced by your copy and your content as well, and it's really important for discoverability and indexing that your products have be optimized for AI search. There's more and more people utilizing not just Alexa shopping, but also other search platforms to get the answers they need for shopping questions. And the important thing is that if you're not looking at what are those top queries for Alexa shopping within your category and directly answering that as applicable to your product, then you're gonna have the AI systems be suggesting your competitors instead of you. So you really do not want to miss out on this. We provide an example here to kind of wrap your head around it a little bit. Alexa is able to show you a lot of the common questions for your product, for your category, kind of explore what that looks like, and make sure that you are directly answering the specific solutions that your product offers. It tends to be things that are more oriented towards use cases, towards the different times of day a product might be applicable, different events. It's very specific, natural problem-solving language that we're looking for. So if you're too general with your benefits and claims, then this is what you'd be missing out on. So one example here is from Lasko, a partner we recently worked with regarding some of their fan units. And one of the discoveries was that there was a theme throughout a lot of the top queries of Alexa shopping, as well as review analysis in the category, that customers want to know how quiet these products are. And you can see here some of the analysis we were looking at is, at least 15 appearances for this one product in recent history around this. And so people are saying things like, oh, this product is very quiet, or I'm looking for a product with low sound, or they're asking questions around how quiet is this product really? And so this type within Alexa shopping is called an audience type. You're looking for matches. Alexa is looking for matches of audience. And this example of how you might solve for this could be in listing copy. This is something that customers might not actually be reading all of your bullets. Your content department always kind of hates to hear that, but that's the real facts here is that the infographics where people are scanning and looking, but the bullets are really important because they address the questions that AI is looking for. And AI can also look at through the images as well, but you can put a lot of those use cases and those answers to questions within the copy. So here you can see some addressing the technology that this fan has related to the silent performance, and also quiet climate control and things like that that would directly answer some of these top narratives. So very, very important aspect not to lose sight of. All right, so we have a couple more here. I want to go through these a little bit faster to make sure that we have enough time to go through the audit framework. So this is related to brand stores and merchandising. We often see that there is a lack of intentional merchandising for priority product SKUs or categories that, is really an area that customers lose sight of what you have to offer. So brands will have a broader selection of products that maybe some of which are out of stock, some might be inactive. It's harder to navigate to subcategories in a lot of the brands that we audit. This is the biggest opportunity to cross-sell your product, to talk about your brand value as a whole and what you have to offer across a broad range. So if someone is coming to say shoes for crews to look for shoes for working in a restaurant, they might not realize that you have solutions for other applications. So this is the opportunity to really cross-sell those elements and to provide really intentional merchandising. This means the homepage is maximized, where you're getting all your maximum organic traffic. And I really recommend auditing this on a quarterly basis as well for the basics. If you set this up optimized, say in Q1, you want to make sure that your products don't go out of stock, that the categories are still relevant, and kind of move this around a little bit to ensure that for the seasonality, it is up to date. Another area kind of related more on the brand level is brand story content. This is often really an area that brands is low-hanging fruit to get this fixed. You have a piece of content that's typically above the A plus, sometimes below it, that talks about all of your offerings as a brand. This is on every single ASIN that you sell. So this could even be on a C-level product that you don't have time to optimize very much. This is the area to indicate this is from our brand, build trust, and also cross-sell. There's so much opportunity missed here where brands do not differentiate themselves on a brand level. This is where you can drive organic traffic to your brand store and also cross-sell. You can have tiles you particularly populate for big days like Prime Day. So this is a big area where it's really important to maximize this space on every single listing and make sure it's live on every single listing that you sell. So auditing to make sure that it's live and that it's doing what it needs to be doing, updating this periodically for the ASINs that are most important to showcase, super important.
I just want to add that all this is interconnected, right? So if you're getting people looking at your brand store or your brand story, it should be prompting them at least in part to go to your brand store. Um, And then when you get them on your brand store, you want to have it properly merchandised to maximize conversions and basket size. And then obviously, most of that traffic goes to the PDP. So being discoverable, having the right content on the PDP, these things go a long way, and they're part of a system where we're not even touching on today is, when you pay to drive that traffic, how are you making the most of it to convert it? And making sure you're not wasting ad dollars but maximizing them. So it is all an interconnected system.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I've seen brands that didn't have any brand story and added it, having an increase in branded traffic just from the recognition that that provides. So really important for organic and paid for sure. This is a quick example I wanted to give from Suave that we recently worked with, and this is talking about making sure that your branding is fully represented within the e-commerce space, so that you really are not just merchandising, but also representing your story, your brand legacy, perhaps, depending on kind of what your differentiators on the category are. That you're talking about your full selection, so you really don't want to keep the shoppers guessing at what you have to offer, who you are. This should be the one-stop shop for everything in a really easy, smooth way that makes it recognizable. If you remember seeing Suave on the store when you go to pick up your shampoo, it should be a similar, really smooth shopping experience where you recognize the brand. All right, so that moves us into the audit framework itself. This is intended to share some of the way that we approach this, some of the best practices we found, and the ways that we recommend our partners really ensure that their creative is supporting their ad strategy and is lockstep with their overall business goals. So, this is kind of at a high level, the cadence at which we recommend this. So number one, I like to kind of step back for a minute and remind people that you've got to ensure pre-launch of any creative that you have created, that you're doing error checks, that you're ensuring everything actually goes live the way you intended, and that it's rendering properly on mobile and desktop. So, the very beginning, you want to make sure that you're checking the rendering of everything that goes live on your platforms. Then once that starts to appear, you want to do a pulse check about a month out, and in a monthly cadence if creative has been live for a while, to really ensure that there's nothing that's broken, that things aren't falling off. For instance, your infographics might not be showing, you might have, other content appearing, or your brand story might be falling off certain ASINs, but also just for the sake of looking at the data and seeing, is anything really tanking because of updates that we made? Is there some unexpected changes in, the questions that you're receiving from customers, etc. And then on a quarterly basis is where we'd really focus more the deep dive auditing. And that's what we'll go through with the next couple of slides in the next few minutes, is what does that really mean? What is the framework for a deeper audit? Should you be looking at? That really should be the products that bring in the majority of your sales. And what things do you need to align to make sure that you're not missing out on the sales potential of your listings. And then finally, on a yearly level, there are certain things that we would look at, but that tends to be a broader appearance of how are you looking as a whole, brand level, brand store auditing, and some of the deep dive onto certain opportunity SKUs as you launch into new seasons and things like that. All right. So not everything falls into that rhythm. And oftentimes, I get a lot of conversations with partners that are asking, well, should I update this or I just update this? When should I look at this again? It's very important to not just look to your calendar of that I just shared, but also there's certain triggers that mean you should be looking at your content right away and not waiting for your quarterly review. And so things like that might be conversion drops. It could be changes in your competition where you have a new competitor entering the marketplace. You might be, third-party sellers coming in and offering cheaper products, and you need to position yourself more clearly against them. It might be Amazon changes in their policies that you need to make sure to align to and be in compliance with. This could be for off Amazon, other platforms as well, where sometimes they do or do not always communicate these things. So it's important to keep up on that. And then also just your own priority changes. So, if you are changing ad strategy, if targeting strategy, if your audience is evolving a little bit and you're off Amazon campaigns or your national marketing, if you are looking to launch a new product in a little bit of a different target market, those are all reasons to look at your KPIs, to adjust your creative, audit it in specific ways. And this kind of outlines what some of those reports might look like, the elements of the creative that you might update. So for instance, with competitive changes, make sure you're checking main images, titles, things that people are looking at in the search page, and know who is showing up next to you in that search page, whether it's organic and in terms of sponsored traffic as well. All right, so a few different checkpoints here that you should be looking at in your quarterly audits. Number one is just the full listing view. So Jason touched on this a little bit. It's not just your product pages, it is your brand store, it's your brand story, it's from top to bottom. What people initially see, your main image, your titles, but then when they get to your page, they click through, you capture that audience through the click-through rate, then you're on the page. Does everything sync up? Is everything rendering appropriately? Do you have all the images that you intend to have showing on there? Are there some maybe third-party seller images sneaking in that you need to try to get off of your page? Is everything showing up consistently in your A plus? Oftentimes I'll catch different previous priorities on partner products, even top sellers, where it's like, did you intend to have this product in your comparison chart? You recently told me that was going to be discontinued, and I didn't even realize it was there. This is why we do these audits, to make sure you're catching those things and everything is working together. So you're not saying one message in the infographics and then you updated the A plus at another point and don't realize that it's contradicting and it's affecting reviews, that kind of thing. So important to take a step back and not get lost in just one thing to make sure everything is working together. And this is also why we always recommend that if you're especially doing content on your top sellers in a strategic way, you update everything together and you see how it performs together to really ensure that it has the impact that you're looking on your KPIs.
Yeah, and I think it does depend on the listing too. We don't really prescribe one size fits all approaches. I would say like if it's a really high volume seller, you probably want to test certain elements first to understand the impact. Whereas if it's not as, much of not as big of a seller, then, maybe you're updating more at one time. Or if there's variations or you're doing one at a time or all of them if it's not as big of a seller. So I think part of it is understanding where the product is in its journey, so to speak, and then, kind of evaluating from there. On the other side of that, Amazon is introducing more and more measurement tools, which is helpful. I think everybody knows at this point the split testing tools are pretty suspect, but I've been introducing more measurement and testing tools on the brand store, which I hope they roll out to the PDPs. So as those evolve, it should lead to better ways to measure the impact of content changes.
Yeah, excellent point. And if it's a lower tier product, then maybe the level of branding and custom graphic design is not the same and it shouldn't be the same. However, there should still be some brand consistency that you can certainly feed into any kind of AI production that you do as well. It's very important that especially a lot of the enterprise brands that we work with, like you don't want to lose the integrity of your brand. You want to come across as coming from your brand. So there's small elements that you can pull through with AI as well for the bottom tiers to ensure that's happening across your page. All right. And then number two here is main images. I touched on the fact that this is so important for click-through rates. This is really important for the sponsored products on the ad side that you're really maximizing these images. So many of the ad space within e-commerce is a sponsored image, a sponsored title, and you're not doing a lot of custom creative. There's limited ways in which you can do custom messaging within these spaces. So you really want to maximize this. You want to ensure that there's high quality, that they're rendering properly, that you're pushing the boundaries as much as you can without being suppressed with these images, and that is it's rendering properly on mobile, that you are really getting the clicks to your page, that there's no question that this is a legitimate page that you're selling directly from your brand or an authorized seller, etc. So really important that you benchmark this and that you check in on it every now and then and ensure that compared to the competitors around you, you are standing out. So look at who's showing up next to you and really maximize this space. Then, of course, the carousels, the infographics within the page are the most essential piece for conversion rates. So this is really important area to ensure that you are not just filling the stack in as much as you can for as much of your catalog as you can, because this is really where the conversion rate is going to happen. But also you're proactively answering the questions that customers already have. And you can do research, whether it's in a category before you launch a product, as to what people are asking, whether it's knowing who you're targeting and resonating with them. It's also ensuring, like we spoke to a little bit, some of the mistakes we see around differentiation. Make sure those first couple of images are actually speaking to the right thing. So don't leave the important differentiator to like number 6 or 7 in your image stack. Ensure that it's upfront. And when you're auditing for this, you want to kind of roll through these different points and say, are we still answering the right things? Are we still legible? Are we still differentiating ourselves properly? Maybe you've gotten some customer feedback off of Amazon or on your D2C that you never integrated into Amazon that would actually help to distinguish your products better and increase your conversion. So ensure that all of that is covered. Now we have reviews as a really great area to audit regularly. This is looking at not just all time, because especially if you're doing this quarterly, you'd want to be focused mostly on the last quarter of reviews and trends, both in positive and negative. These are often really great gold mines for finding some wonderful use cases, some excellent ways that maybe shoppers express better than you could ever about why they love a product on the positive side. And you can even highlight that directly as a testimonial within your content in some ways. And it can also be looking at issues that customers are having or misunderstanding. Maybe they don't realize certain benefits or technology and they're not talking about it much. And you say that, why don't they realize that this is an important differentiator for us? And then you recognize it's not in your content the way it should be. And perhaps you could be converting new customers by talking about that more. So really worth pulling these reviews and then integrating them as much as you can. And then titles are really important to check mobile optimization for this, rendering properly. Pull up a mobile device. We all work on our desktop computers a lot of times. Don't forget to check title legibility. What does it actually say and look like within mobile? And ensure that this is really optimized for converting the customers on the key element of what the product is. It's amazing how many times when I'm auditing for this, it just doesn't state what the product is. Like I think we all, when we're really deep in our products and our brands, we know so well what these products are that we don't think twice about it. But sometimes you just accidentally leave out the fact that this is actually a drill and not a drill bit, for instance, or whatever it may be. You have to be really accurate, but also what is different about it, that this is, a product that has higher absorption rates or some whatever that may be. And that should be really obvious within your titles. And then you have your A plus content. And here is really where you can get a little bit more detailed about both upselling, cross-selling, as well as things like ensuring that people are understanding the product so they do not return it, that they have the right expectation, addressing top things that customers love about the product and really getting into that more. So here, one tip is to, you can look at your voice of the customer reports. You can get a sense of what people are saying in terms of why they're returning products and make sure that you're addressing elements there, and directly talking about it in your A plus. And if you're missing A plus on certain creative, this is might be an opportunity to see, have your priorities changed this quarter? Are there elements, there are products that you want to grow on? Maybe areas where you can expand your more strategic creative that's performing really well that quarter into maybe some AI generated scaled creative on some of your lower touch items. And then we have our backend keywords. And here, typically what we see people missing out on in this space is they're repeating what was in the front end into the back end of the keywords. They're also maybe leaving it blank altogether. Even on your lower tiered products, it's really important that you fill this out for indexing and organic ranking so that you're really maximizing organic here. And then also it's an important space for Alexa shopping that's scanning everything, including the back end, images, front end, everything. So, look at what's there and see if you're maximizing it fully. And I would say, we don't necessarily always have to fully fill this out. It needs to be relevant. You actually could be penalized if it's not super relevant by Alexa shopping and some of the algorithms. So you do have to be a little bit cautious not to just word stuff here, but you still want to make sure you're filling it out so that it's giving you the traffic in some extra areas. For instance, sometimes this might be a place to add like some top Spanish keywords, or if you're in Canada, French keywords, often lacking in this area for brands. All right. And so with that, we're getting towards the close here. We want to make sure to leave some time for questions. This is a nice little cheat sheet that you can take back to your team of some of the questions that we really encourage you to be asking on a regular basis. And this kind of can kick off some good discussion points as well when it comes to areas of opportunity. If you go back to your creative team, or your agency, or your department that is running ads that uses a lot of the creative to convert their traffic, cover some of these questions. Things like, when was your last full listing audit? What triggered it? Are they looking at the right things to trigger audits? How has Alexa shopping and AI search been affecting the way that you're positioning or talking about your benefits within the copy? Things like what share of your backend is actually duplicated. Maybe that's an easy win to fix on some of your products. So this is just a nice practical thing that you can take back to your teams and see what you can do to polish things up and really make sure you're not leaving anything on the table.
Yeah, this is great. Thank you for running us through this. Uh, and I think, yeah, a lot we try to be very practical at Nectar in terms of the recommendations we make, so you can do things that'll actually move the needle in your business. And I think oftentimes people look at creative and they get overwhelmed. Hey, we can't do everything, or our catalog's so big. What do you recommend in that instance? How they kind of where do you start? Are you getting overwhelmed? You have ADD, right, to a degree, or an analysis paralysis? Where do you start? What do you recommend, Kathleen?
Oh, didn't realize that was addressed to me. Of course it is. What I would recommend is that you look at your priorities first. So, it can be easy to just be paralyzed by all of the potential areas you could look at. So, what is your priority? Are you confident about your top seller and they're converting really well? You don't necessarily always have to re-audit your top performers. It might be that you have a growth opportunity for an area where you're wanting to invest some more dollars, and that could be a really good place to start doing a small audit. So focus in on just a few products initially. If you on the other hand are have a priority of trying to expand new to brand and bring a wider, for average cart size, for instance, then you might think more about scaling your content across more of your catalog, right? So I would start first with what are your biggest KPIs for advertising and or your business as a whole within the platform you're looking at. And then that kind of helps to direct you towards what to look at. Now, if you're looking for just some really low-hanging fruit to start out with, that's where like this sheet here would help you out, where yes, check your top 5 ASINs and see how the conversion rate is trending. Because the conversion rate can really tell you that maybe a new competitor is entered in and it's stealing some of your market share, and creative could help with some of that. So I think this list of 5 items will also kind of just give you one or two. Maybe one or two of these would resonate more with you and your brand, and then I suggest that you start there.
Yeah, and I think for me the big takeaway in what you said is that you want to usually start with a group of products, and it's not everything or an entire category necessarily, but a group of products, and that could be based on different reasons, like your top sellers or current priority for the company, or whatever it may be. But we see that a lot of brands get caught up in, oh, we have to redo everything, and that's just not feasible. Even for we work with some of the biggest companies in the world, and they don't even approach it that way, even though they can afford to do it. So I always we're proponents of chunking it and then working out from there. We have one great question. What are your recommendations, Kathleen, for the alt text and A plus?
Oh yeah, great question. Like you definitely want to capitalize on that and fill that out. It does matter to include information in that space. It's definitely also meant for accessibility reasons that we want to fill that out to be clear of what is in the A plus to some degree, but it can also be of benefit in terms of the keywords. Now, I wouldn't hide one of your most important keywords in the alt text, but it can be an area to ensure that you're maybe also addressing some of the areas that are important to talk about for Alexa shopping. It is one of those fields that is still important. I wouldn't spend a lot of time on it. I think we tend to like go over it as the last step in our creative updates to make sure that we have something filled out there and that it's included. Because it does matter, but it is not the most important field to fill out. Like I would first make sure like your backend keywords aren't blank before I would go fill out your alt text. But it's kind of like that last layer that is nice to include.
Yeah, and keep in mind that Google also crawls Amazon to index pages. So all the backend text, or not all the backend text, but the alt text and A plus would be crawlable by Google. So there's sometimes collateral benefits. Same reason it's important to update your brand store, because Amazon has so much domain authority. It's why you run a branded search on Google. One of the top results for any company that sells products on Amazon or is endemic to the platform will be the Amazon brand store. So you also sometimes have to think beyond the internal ecosystem.
Yeah, great point.
Well, we appreciate everyone's time today, and Kathleen, thank you so much for putting this together and running us through this. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to us. You can reach out to us on our website or on LinkedIn. And we thank you for attending today.
Thanks, everyone.